$60.
Oh, I saw it to
$60?
rent for like 30, but like,
Yeah.
I'm doing that. No.
What?
No, it was
No.
So, why so expensive?
because nobody's buying it.
So they only
Don't
printed
know.
They only printed like 5 copies.
Try to recoup
Yeah.
their costs. I don't know.
So, of these 45 victims, or suspected victims, only 2 of them have officially been ruled murders or even suspicious deaths. The rest of them officially are accidental drownings. So, we'll talk about these 2 murders in a little detail.
Oh, 2 specific ones?
These 2 specific
Got it.
ones that people generally agree are at least suspicious. One of them, nobody disagrees, was a murder. Another one of them... Well, let's talk about that first one.
Okay, let's do
So
that.
we don't know if it was a murder or not. It's a young man by the name of Patrick McNeil. He, as far as I can tell, and as far as the internet lore goes, was the kind of spearhead case. Gannon, one of the biggest proponent detective of this theory, of this serial killer theory, he worked on this case.
As a police officer.
Yeah.
Yes, so it was when he was still serving.
Yeah, and it kind of stuck
Active
with
duty.
him.
Got it. Okay.
All right, so Patrick McNeil. After a night of bar hopping with friends, a, quote, incredibly drunk, unquote, Patrick told his friends that he was tired and he had an early class, so he was going to take the subway back to campus. He was a student at Fordham University.
Which is in New York.
In New York, yeah.
New York City, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of his female friends said that she was also ready to go, but, as I can attest as a lady, had to go to the bathroom first. It's
course.
hard when you're drunk. It's, you break the seal, you're done.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah. You guys have been drinking with me.
So she went to the bathroom, and she said, "Wait here. I'm gonna go to the bathroom." She went to the bathroom. She came back. He was gone.
Typical drunk behavior.
Yeah, and it was February 16th of 1997, as we said, in New York City. 10 days later, more than 600 people showed up to volunteer to help look for him because he had been reported missing by this point. Police had searched hospitals, soup kitchens, and even Rikers Island jail for him by this point. Kind of all of the things that you would do.
Yeah.
And more than 10,000 flyers had been hung all around New York City and all the way up to Yonkers. And then it wasn't until April 7th that his body was finally found, floating 12 miles downriver from where he'd last been seen. I use the term just 12 miles. Most of the internet says a startling 12 miles. But
I've
after
lived
like
on
a
river.
couple
12
months,
miles isn't that far.
it doesn't
No,
seem like
not
that
at
far
all.
to me. The medical examiner said that he had a, quote, moderate amount of alcohol in his bloodstream. In fact, actually, the exact quote was more than a little and less than a lot of alcohol in his bloodstream. During that time, the New York medical examiners don't release exact blood alcohol numbers.
I'm going to use that next time
It's
I get
good.
asked how much I've had to drink.
Well, officer,
Yeah. More than a little.
to quote
More
a
than a
medical
little.
examiner,
But less than a lot.
less than a lot.
When a cop pulls me over and he asks me that, I just go, a lot.
So much? Why?
You're a little jealous, huh? You can't get drunk on the job.
Sorry to take us off on that tangent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez. Patrick had, according to the original report, had no broken bones, no head trauma, and no physical injuries. His cause of death was left undetermined, though they specified accidental undetermined. He was in good shape, apparently not as drunk as people had indicated.
According to the medical examiner.
The medical examiner, he had, so nobody knows how he wound up in the river, and according to the original report, he had been in the water since he was disappeared, so it wasn't a later body dump.
So it wasn't like a month later somebody
No.
pitched him into the river or something crazy like
According to the original report.
that. Okay.
I will continue to specify, according to the original report.
Okay.
Because I actually did find the original New York Times article online and read it, and this is all consistent with the original reporting. It's repeated over and over again throughout a lot of the literature you read about this.
And I'm presuming that his trip to the subway station didn't take him over any bodies of water, like the river?
No.
Seems unlikely, though.
No. As a note, the owner of the last bar that he was in, that he left drunk, paid $8,500 in fines for serving what we in the industry called a visibly intoxicated person under allegations that Patrick had actually fallen down in the bathroom. He was so drunk and continued to get served.
Wow.
It's hard, but it's hard to know. He was 20 actually when he disappeared. He was actually a week away from his 21st birthday, and so it's hard to know at that age. You kind of presume he was an athlete. He'd probably been drinking a lot for since he was a kid, since he was 16. He could probably handle his liquor, but it's also possible that that's not the case. It's possible that he hadn't ever really been drinking, and when you first start drinking, you don't have to have that high of a blood alcohol content for it to affect you, because you don't know you're not prepared.
Well, and you've got to, I don't know if you two remember this, but I remember this vividly, is that as a suddenly able to go to the bar kind of guy, you drink when you can't go to the bar. And so you have drinks, and you don't have a whole bunch in rapid succession. There's something about when you're first in the bar, shots, let's have shots. And so you down, a bunch of booze really fast, and it'll knock you on your seat in no time flat.
Yeah, or you're drinking things that have hidden the alcohol, or there are a lot of different ways that a lower blood alcohol content can actually make you act and feel drunker than your blood alcohol content is.
Yeah, it totally depends on what he was drinking.
Absolutely, and
chock
how
full of sugar.
fast, and
But
if he was tired or what.
And he did drown though, right? Since he fell in the bathroom. I wonder if the girl goes out to go to the bathroom. He decides, what the hell, I should go to the bathroom too for a climb on the subway. And he passes out and winds up with his head in the toilet, and he drowns. And then the bartender finds him there.
Well, it was undetermined.
Yeah, anyway.
So it does actually...
I'm actually joking, but...
I know. But that is a good point to reiterate, that the medical examiner couldn't determine that he drowned, just that he was dead.
He had water in his lungs, but it wasn't provable that that's what killed him.
Yes. All right, that all out of the way. Gannon, I guess, was a police officer. I couldn't ever quite get a handle on if he was just a beat cop or if he was an investigator.
I got the impression he was a detective at the time.
Yeah, that was the impression I had too, but it was earlier in his career. He's not a particularly old guy. He's still around now. Not that 97 was that long ago, but that was almost 20 years ago, in case anybody needs to feel really old.
I think he was a cop for 15 or 20 years, something like that.
Yeah, no. I mean, so it was earlier in his career, certainly.
Okay.
He wrote a report about this case, trying to get it reclassified as a homicide. And I've read the report. I think we'll probably link that one that'll be one of the links that we put up for this, because it's actually good to read his report. Apparently, the investigators on the case, and because it was an unresolved case, this kind of makes sense. They didn't release the full autopsy package, which means, all of the reports and all the pictures and all of that stuff, until 2009 for the public and 2008 to the family. And it was about a month after the package was released that Gannon put forth this theory of the serial killer.
Okay.
So here's some additional stuff that Gannon says that he discovered about this case. Apparently, based on the water currents of the East River when Patrick was found, his body shouldn't have been where it was found. The allegation is that he would have had to have been abducted and dropped into the river at that point in order for him to have ended up there at all. I will note the East River, for those of you that do not know, was and still is an active shipping lane. So I understand the theory of currents, but I also feel like that stuff gets disrupted sometimes by giant ships coming in and out.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Question mark?
The current does go downstream. I don't know.
Yeah. A witness apparently reported seeing a car following Patrick that night. That's literally the only information they were able to give, a partial plate number that never went anywhere. I don't put a lot of stock into that.
No.
Patrick was found in just his jeans, underwear, and socks. This caused the investigators to state that it's hard to believe that he would have stripped the rest of his clothing off and jumped into the river, because Patrick had last been seen wearing a plaid button-up shirt, jeans, and some brown boots. I never saw mention of a jacket, despite the fact that it was 30 degrees in February, 30 degrees Fahrenheit.
The thing about it is what really makes me wonder is if he had his socks on, but he took his boots off, and he did intend to go swimming. Unlikely, but
Right.
right. So if he took his boots off, why didn't he take his socks off too?
Yeah, that seems
That's
silly.
kind of hinky.
I agree. And you know, as I said, there's certainly some weird stuff about this case.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna refute that. There are some things that so we're going through this and we can go back and kind of, you know, pick it apart. But there is some weird stuff about it, but there's also a lot of stuff that just seems like you're grasping at straws.
Yeah.
No. The blood alcohol level, the actual number in Patrick's system was actually eventually released to be 0.16, which is twice the legal limit in America. And we do know that bodies do produce alcohol as they decompose. So apparently the investigators were able to figure out, based on the time that he was dead and blah, 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 that his blood alcohol level was likely more like 0.12, which it would have been 6 drinks over the course of an hour.
6 drinks in an hour?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's pretty dry. I mean, to be fair, like 0.08 feels pretty tipsy.
Oh yeah.
Twice that feels pretty drunk.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm an experienced drinker.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, we need to talk about that, by the way.
For a 21-year-old, it's I don't know. The other part of this is Patrick. He had been an athlete in high school. He was 6 feet tall and 195 pounds. So the investigators say that he couldn't possibly have been acting as drunk as he was reported unless there was something else in play, like a drug of some sort. Patrick was also found on his back, which in drowning cases is incredibly rare, particularly for someone of his physique. If you have a bunch of fat on your front,
A lot of belly fat.
yeah, a lot of, fat has a tendency to float.
Yeah.
So that'll flip you over if you're like really overweight or obese or anything like that. But he was obviously not. So apparently that's a big thing. Additionally, the way that the blood settled in his body, the lividity, apparently indicated that he had died on his front and been on his front for the first at least 8 hours. It takes 8 hours. It's my understanding. It takes 8 hours for lividity to set in, but once it's set in, it's done. Pretty much the blood has settled.
Blood pooling.
Yeah.
It's done. Yeah, you
Coagulates,
can tell.
yeah.
So apparently the allegation is that he would have had to have died and been on his front for at least the first. Face down. At least the first.
On land.
Well, face down.
Face
period.
down in water.
It doesn't say on water.
Doesn't
or
matter
land.
where.
Doesn't matter where.
Yeah, but I mean, if he had just rolled over in the water, so that he was face up after he drowned and everything, you would have to have been for somebody to place him in there face up in the water, then they would have had to have him face down somewhere. You're not going to throw your body in the water, leave it there for 8 hours, and then go back in your boat and turn it over.
No. And that's what Devin's getting at, is that he drowned face down.
Yeah.
Well,
He was face down and then at some point was flipped over.
All I'm saying is that he died face down and was face down for the first 8 hours.
Yeah.
Whether it was in water or on land remains to be determined, especially since, we can just go into this right now. Since it is an active shipping lane, it doesn't seem crazy out of the realm of possibilities to me that in the 4 months that he was in the river, the 2 months he was in the river,
that he rolled around,
he could have gotten flipped over somehow. That's reasonable to me.
Yeah.
Whether or not land, sea, I don't.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that it does seem that he died on his front. The autopsy also apparently stated that there were ligature marks around his neck, which would indicate that he had been strangled.
Yeah.
With something.
You don't know how to approach this part, do you?
There were fly eggs in his pubic hair, which suggested that he would have had to have been allowed to decompose on land in an area that was warmer than approximately 40 degrees Fahrenheit.
Why does that have to be land? I mean, it could be somewhere warmer, but still in the water, potentially, couldn't it?
Flies they're like horse flies. They don't lay eggs in the water. So his pelvis would have had to have been above water.
Okay.
For them to have, and that's really...
It's unlikely.
Super unlikely. Yeah, super unlikely.
I don't actually think that's super unlikely. I also think that explains why he doesn't have boots. if he washes up on shore for a while under a dock or something and some homeless dude finds him, it's like, hey, free pair of boots, nice shirt, I'll take that. And he's sitting there for a while. That would explain A, why those things were gone, and B, why he had flies on him, because docks, the docks aren't
kinda
just
filthy.
against the seawall.
That's true.
There is, the land does slope down underneath them. So
That's
that's why I had to bring that up, because it's just, it doesn't mean a whole lot to me.
That's fair. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There was some what they are calling severe blackening of Patrick's head, upper torso, and lower waist area. The medical examiner says that this is decomposition due to exposure. Gannon disagrees. He thinks that it was actually burning that was sustained prior to Patrick's death.
Like somebody took a blowtorch to you burning, or thrown into a barrel that was on fire burning.
Can we wait
Okay.
on that for a minute?
That's fine.
Okay, cool. They suggest that he was tied by his neck, causing his back to be largely protected from the burns, because the middle of his back had no burns or anything like that.
Okay.
But if they tied him to a chair, they would have tied his hands to the chair at least too, right?
Yeah. Okay, and then one of our favorite terms that we've talked about,
Yeah!
Ever.
Devin's favorites.
favorite thing ever, yeah. Apparently there was a really distinct lack of skin slippage.
Slippage.
Ugh.
Yeah, no, it's gross.
But I agree that does kind of present a problem for the argument that he was in the water for more than, say, like 24 hours, because skin starts to slip off your body when it's been in the water for sustained periods of time, particularly 2 months.
I just wonder about the temperature, the effects of the temperatures on that.
That's
If
fair.
it's February when he goes in, it's frozen. He's an
Yeah.
ice cube.
Yes. They also maintained that the decomposition on his body was not consistent. Rather, that the top of him was like really decomposed, while the bottom of him was almost not decomposed at all.
Would that have been because he was wearing his jeans?
I don't know, or because the top of him was maybe more out of the water, that he was wearing
was
his shoes.
washed
and
up
they
onto
were
a log or
sinking,
something.
Yeah. He was,
I
he
don't
was
know.
washed up onto a sloping bank. Yeah.
I don't know. They point out 4 distinct parts of like different stages of decomposition happening on his body, but I also don't think that's an argument for him being held on land either. I just don't think, if you're going to argue, well, his body was in different states of decomposition, well, like, how did that happen on land even then? Versus, why is that a bigger problem than just saying, well, his feet were more submerged in colder water, so they're better preserved than the top of them. I
Could
don't
be. Wow.
Okay, let's go back and address some of the stuff that we just talked about, because I think we can talk about some of it. As I said, I don't have a problem with Patrick's body maybe being rotated. It was an act of shipping. As you suggested, I guess it's possible that he, kind of washed ashore for a certain amount of time and then
Washed up on something.
or whatever. Yeah. The severe blackening, according to the medical examiner report, was actually like black spots, which I have the sense of being kind of more like cigarette burn type sizes, which the medical examiner says is like decomposition, which makes sense. So
But not giant swaths
No.
of skin, which is what I got the impression of.
when you read just Gannon's report.
Okay.
Yes, we're starting to get
Okay.
Yeah.
We're getting somewhere.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that there wasn't evidence of anything other than alcohol in his system, with the exception of there being really trace amounts of the GHB, which is a thing that naturally occurs in the body when we decompose.
All right.
So take that as you will. Okay. Gannon says that Patrick, his theory about what happened to Patrick is that Patrick was he was stalked and kidnapped and held on land and tortured and then murdered and then dropped into the river like 3 days before they found his body. He was disappeared for 50 days. His body was not recovered for 50 days.
It is? Okay.
Yeah. That presents problems in and of itself for me. They say, well, the skin slippage. Well, okay, sure, yeah, skin slippage. That is a problem. I agree. The kind of damage you see to Patrick's body isn't super consistent with the kind of damage you would see from a body floating in the water for 50 days. But they also say that his blood alcohol level was the 0.12, but they say that he was held on land alive for like 47 days.
They is Gannon.
Gannon and his investigators, and then killed and then dropped in the. So I don't know. They can't have it both ways. They can't say he was held on land, but his blood alcohol level